Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hey Bree, I am so excited to be talking to Sarah Price tonight. And so Sarah is going to tell you about herself in a minute, but I just have to say the reason I invited her on is because she's been working with our family and we have seen amazing results. And so Sarah is a coach that has just blessed our family immensely. So, Sarah, if you want to just tell our listeners what you do, you can even share, of course, share your website. What do you do? How do you serve people in your community?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. I've loved working with your family. And this is just such an honor. So thank you so much. So I was in HR for over 25 years, and really felt called to work with individuals and high school students and college students really around life coaching. I'm certified in a methodology through Gallup StrengthsFinder, which has been around for 70 years. Lots of people take it at work or take it personally. And so I start coaching around strength finders. But my true passion is working with these students, usually age 15 and above, because I want them to thrive in the world. I want them to have a positive impact on society. Lots of things have happened to these teens. I have a 14-year-old, I have a 17-year-old. We've been through COVID, we've been through isolation. I mean, there's just so many different things going on for these teens now than when we were growing up. And I work with them on helping them through empowerment, through confidence, making sure that they have a clear vision of how they can contribute. What do they want to do? Whether that's college, not college, what is their potential? I want them to have a better sense of self today and in the future. So just like in working with your kids, just making sure that they're on the right path and making sure that they have the right habits and have the right behaviors and making sure that they have motivation coming from inside them to take them when they leave your house and when they are on your own so that they can live and thrive. And what I have found through my own life at this point is I didn't get a coach or I didn't learn about strength finders until I was in my 30s and 40s. And there were some pivots I had to make. And I realized some things later in life that I wish I had known earlier. And so my drive around wanting to work with youth really comes from a place of we have to get to these kids earlier. They need to know what their strengths are earlier rather than waiting into their 30s and 40s. And so I love the methodology, and I've loved working with these kids. So it lights me up every day, and I'm loving it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I've never even heard of I never heard of Gallup Strength Finders before you. I never even thought to get a coach for my children. I mean, what a fantastic idea because just like you said, they're done for right now receiving from me.
Yeah.
Like over it. They're like, whatever she says, I don't care. I mean, I've even tried to implement I watch you, Sarah, and I watch you with my kids and I watch how you direct me and how you coach me. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I'm gonna try that. And I go and I try it and they're like, Sarah's so so the beauty in that is it's normal, but also that they have someone that they will receive that from and that you can ask them the hard questions and they'll answer. But you know what I would have never known on my own is how to motivate them to reach their goals. So can you share how do you do that?
Yeah. So first, I have to meet that. I really truly believe in meeting them where they're at, right? I am judgment-free zone. I am not trying to make them someone different. I'm not trying to change the past. I meet them where they're at. And being a life coach, um, whether you're a life coach for adults or teens, et cetera, is really growth and going the go forward plan. So just sitting down with them and having a conversation with them to understand, how old are you? What do you enjoy doing? What do you not enjoy doing? I ask all my students when I start working with them, tell me a little bit about what you think you're good at. They can never answer, which is really interesting, right? They don't know how to talk about themselves from a positive perspective. So then I say, well, tell me what your friends would say about you, right? And then they can sort of open up. And then I ask, what are some things that you're struggling with? And there are a lot of similar things, right? Procrastination, my room's a mess, my parents are bothering me, right? My grades at school, etc. And so teens really are influenced by four things: developmentally, psychological impacts, social impacts, and then environmental factors, which is why I've loved getting to know you from a homeopathic perspective, because I was raised on homeopathic as well. And I think, health and wellness and mind and body are so connected. And I truly believe that. And so it really just takes a village. And my kids don't listen to me either, right? And I do this for a living. And so when there is someone that's non-judgmental, I'm not looking to judge you at all. I'm just looking to help you and help you grow. Usually kids are really open to that. And they will answer difficult questions that I ask them, because I'm not coming from a place of a parent, right? And I'm also giving them a roadmap and a common language for them to be able to understand with your parents, like I did with you and your husband, to be able to understand their strengths. So it sort of creates this new way to communicate with me, with them. And then obviously I'm a parent advocate as well. So you know this really well, but I don't do anything with the kids that I don't talk to you about, right? And we leave Voxers and messages back for each other, I mean, all the time, every single day, right? So I'm not in the home, you are, but part of the goal is to give you the information that they're telling me, so that you can help them while you're in the home. So unless they tell me something, again, where they're going to hurt themselves or hurt someone else, just like therapy, I try to hold their confidence, but I am not a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist, right? I don't go back into traumas. I want to know the past a little bit so we can move forward. And I think that's another reason this works, is because I'm not asking the teens to sit there and talk to me about all their trauma from when they were 2, right? We all have it. It's just about what they do really well. And kids want to hear what we all want to hear, and be complimented, right? And I can do that through StrengthsFinder. So it's about building trust with them first, and then we can really dive deep.
I'm sorry, Bree. I know you're going to ask them. You're going to be next. I love that you do that. So we have had experiences with therapists, and every time they tell me up front, I will not share anything that these kids say to me with you. I understand that. And I understand
Yeah.
that can help kids open up more, but also I'm in the dark and I can't even help. I'm in the home and I can't be here to help because I don't know what's going on. So I really love that my kids have still opened up to you, even though they know there's some things that you're going to share with me. And it does work. You're right. It works. I'm sorry, Bree, what were you going to say?
No, that's okay. That's okay. I was just thinking that I I love that your not the perspective, like the way you go about that. There's a word I can't think of, is to really hold them accountable. And I've
Mm-hmm.
heard you, I've just heard Melissa has shared with me some, but I think so. My husband was a student pastor for a long time, his overseas students still. So we've worked with students for a long time. And I think one of the misconceptions parents often have is that their student can't handle, like that a teenager can't handle a certain amount of stuff or pressure or whatever. And obviously there are some things that it's too much. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of speaking to them as an older, like holding them to a higher standard, they always rise to that level when you give
Mm-hmm.
them the opportunity. And I see way more often that parents are too easy. They like are afraid of pushing them away or pushing them too hard. So they're like, I'm just gonna let them do their thing. And maybe that is a parental role. You know, they don't love their parent coming at them when they're teenagers. They, but outside voices speak really strongly, are big influences. So having an outside person who can come in and be like, hey, get it together. Like if you want to get here, you
Mm-hmm.
got to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C before you, whatever. This is
Yep,
just my assumption from what I've heard you say, but the accountability I think is huge.
absolutely. And the one thing, and I'm not a scientist, right? But I've been doing this for a while, is that I'll get a little bit of scientific right now, just for all the parents listening, because I think this might help. I hear a lot of times parents say, Sarah, I really need your help because my kid is really lazy. And I have to unpack that because, yes, my kids are lazy too. I have to ask 75 times, take out the garbage. I don't know why. It just is. But when you really unpack, are they really lazy? Like, what is really going on? What's really important to understand is in your brain for teenagers, because development factors play into things like procrastination and learning, etc., is in your brain in the prefrontal cortex. That's responsible for all of our executive functions. That's the part of our brain that helps us plan and make decisions and impulse control. That is scientifically not fully developed in teenagers. And it can make it really hard for them to manage their time effectively. It's hard for them to resist short-term temptations in favor of long-term goals, right? And so sometimes it's just understanding that our teens' brains work a little bit differently. And then I can then navigate through sort of what they're feeling to hold them accountable. There's also other things called intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators. And Melissa and I talk about it all the time, and I talk about it with other parents as well. It's like, why won't my kids do this? Or, I'm leaving their medicine, or I'm leaving their remedies out on the counter for them. Why are they not taking them? Right. And that's literally because they just walk by and forget. And it has to be an intrinsic motivator for them to want to take their remedies, or for them to want to do their homework, or for them to, do whatever their goal is. Right. And there's a fine line between, I always say, being a helicopter parent, because I was for a really long time, versus letting them understand. And this is what I do in my coaching is with these teens is, let's keep the end in mind, and what goal are you trying to get to, right? And if they understand that by not taking their remedies, or by not doing their homework, or whatever it might be, is holding them back from their ultimate goal, they will intrinsically start taking their remedies or whatever they need to do. But we as parents, we're extrinsic motivators, right? So the more we push these kids, or the more we do for them, it's not going to click in their brain that, like, one day I'm not going to be here and I'm going to have to do this for myself, right? So in my opinion, sure, laziness is a thing. Our teens are lazy at times, but I think there's actually more to that. It's just harder for parents to figure out what that is, because you're just so close to the situation.
Yeah. That's what I laughed because that's what I was thinking of when Bree was talking, was how it's so easy to think they're just lazy. And then you
Mhm.
started talking about it. So that's funny. And also I, you know, I work with some teens in my practice. So and then I have my own teens. But and so my teens do the same thing with the teens that I work with. And what happens very often is the mom brings the teens to get my help. Usually it's acne, or it's anxiety and depression. So it's usually mental, emotional, or with the girls, it can be hormonal. So their periods aren't regular or whatever. But the teens themselves don't really care. They don't care if they get better. They don't care. Now, wait a minute. Let me back up. they do care if they have acne because they don't like the way they look and they don't like what people say, but they want a quick fix.
Mhm.
They want it really fast. You know what? Just give me that terrible medicine, that Accutane. I don't care about what it could cause in the future. I want to feel better right now. I want it now. And so that's the most challenging thing in my practice is getting these teens to take their remedies and getting them to understand homeopathy takes time. And so you have to have patience and then you have to have persistence. And that's something a lot of people these days are lacking is patience and persistence, teens and adults, all ages. So what the reason why I recommend people work with you, Sarah, is that I know that you can help those teens see the steps to that
Yeah.
goal. And one of those steps is take those remedies.
Yes. And the interesting thing is that when I start working with teens, I'm not looking to solve the world's issues, right? In 6 or 12 or 15 weeks, whatever it is. We are boiling down to the most important goals for that teen. So when you uncover the root of the goal, right, which could be, in this case, Melissa, if you're working with a teen that has acne, right, they're not usually going to tell me one of my goals is to clear up my acne, right? They might tell me one of my goals is to um, be in musical theater, class, or I want to go into some summer program, right? And so these are like the high level goals. Then after about 2 to 3 weeks, we go through their strengths. I ask them, well, did you enroll in that program? Like we talk about their goals. And then I find out, and this is just a high level example, but then I find out they don't want to get on stage because of their acne. Oh, here we go, right? Like this is the deeper issue, right? Or they're not sleeping, or they're on technology till 3 in the morning, and then they're getting up at 1 in the afternoon, and then they're not taking their remedies so that they don't feel good. So then we start dialing back their goals from, okay, I want to go to college, or these big like lofty goals they had, and then we have to make them shorter, manageable goals. So like, okay, over the next 6 to 8 weeks, what do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? Right? And that's why I think mind and body together is so important, because a lot of these goals for teens come back to their health and their root of what's going on, a lot of around stress and anxiety and procrastination, right? And then once we start understanding, well, you're not going to be in this play because you don't want to be on stage because of your acne. Once I uncover that, right, which usually they're not going to tell their parents, and some do, right? Then I can say, well, if you took your remedies, you would be on stage faster. Like, are we looking at a 6 month plan? Do we want to be on stage in a year? It's the same thing. I work with a lot of teens who want to gain weight or get stronger. It's the same with my son. He's 14. He and I do CrossFit together. He gets very frustrated that he's not getting stronger, but the kid doesn't like to eat, right? So we've really had to work on, what does that mean? Feeding your body with fuel is going to make you stronger in CrossFit. So you sort of have to peel back the onion and find out what's really going on in their brain. And that's what I do to determine what their manageable goals should be, to really be able to see something change at the 6 week mark.
So like, do you do grown-ups? Because all that stuff you just said, I'm like, yeah, I'm like thinking about, okay, we get so overwhelmed, I think, when you think big picture goal. That's really exciting. And then that feels so hard to get to. So then we just don't do anything. Like I'm
Right.
just lazy as a teenager half the time. When it comes to like big goals I have, I'm busier because I have kids and a life and stuff. But when I think of big goals, we just resign to, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get there.
Yep.
And I bet in my own life, I'm like going backwards. Like, well, what are all these little? I need to go back to my shorter term, more sustainable goals to eventually get to the big one.
Yep.
So you do this for adults as well.
I do. And I always start with the StrengthsFinders assessment. And let me tell you a little bit about that. Is that okay? So, the reason I love the StrengthsFinders assessment is because it was created by a psychologist more than 70 years ago, and the results don't change a lot over time. So, when I coach adults or teens or teams in corporate or whatever it is, I like to run the assessment because the assessment, there's 34 strengths that everyone has, and they're broken down into 4 different themes. And it describes if you lead with relationship building, are you an influencer? Do you lead with strategic thinking, or do you lead with executing? And the methodology I love about this, and this is what I really work with, yes, adults, and it's great for teens also, is I don't know about you guys or whatnot, but I'm 51, and when I started in my career and I was in my 20s and 30s, my boss would always say in my performance review, Sarah, you need to improve on these things. And immediately we're going to the weaknesses, right? That's what happens in school sometimes. That happens with guidance counselors sometimes. And I love teachers and guidance counselors. My mom was a teacher and a principal for like 40 years. So love them and respect them. But a lot of times it's looking at weaknesses and making weaknesses better. The StrengthsFinders methodology is the opposite. It's going to show you what your top strengths are, and then it's going to show you what your lesser talents are, that literally with the data, we should not be living in our lesser talents. So when I work with adults or students and I see that they're super high in relationship building, or they're not using these influencing themes, it doesn't mean that they can't build relationships or be influencers. They're just doing it in a different way. And that really is going to affect the type of classes they take, the type of career that you're going to be in, the type of people that you want to work around, the type of culture that you want to be in. And once we understand that, especially earlier than later, like when I discovered my strengths, then I could really say, oh, yeah, a life coach is really what I'm supposed to be doing because of these strengths that I have. And then you take the strengths and you build them into goals. So what's really important is that if, someone, a teenager recently just came to me and was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I looked at her strengths, and it wasn't really a match. So we talked through that, and then we're making manageable goals to figure out maybe what she wants to do instead, right? And so long-winded answer to your question is yes, that I work with adults, but I think it's really important before anyone starts creating goals is figuring out what your strengths are and making sure that you're working on the right goals, and then making sure that you're working on the goals that align with what makes sense to you, because it could be really defeating for adults or teens and exhausting, and it makes you really tired if you're working in your lesser talents.
Gosh, I feel like I have so many things I could ask. So but it probably is going to go on some tangents, but is something you do help. So I'm just thinking, let's say my husband and I, do you teach strengths how to work with other strengths?
Oh, yes.
We have different strengths, maybe some overlap, but where would be some of our points of tension? Or like the parent with this child.
Yes.
Like when you were just strengths are going like this,
Oh,
you're like,
yeah.
this is going to cause some tension. Okay.
And that is what I love to do. That is what lights me up, because I've seen lives change and family dynamics change because of it. And I also am a parent partner. I think, Melissa can probably speak to this, but I work with the teens, and I work with siblings, right? In some cases, or, one of the teens in the family. And it's really like understanding a different language, right? So I love to actually have the parent also do the assessment. If I'm working with a teen, anywhere between like 6 weeks and on, usually at the 3rd or 4th week in that, I will ask the parents to take the assessment, because we go back to what we just spoke about, right? My team is lazy. My teen is unmotivated. Sometimes that's true, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time, the parent just doesn't know how to communicate with their child, or husband and wife, which are so much fun to do, right? And the whole point is not to be the same, right? It's not
Right.
to want your child to be the same as you, because they're actually not. There's a 1 in 33 million chance that your 34 strengths are going to show up in the same order as someone else's. And in your top strengths, 1 through 10, there's a 1 in 250,000-ish chance that your strengths are going to be the same. So really what couples and parents and managers and should understand is that likely, very highly likely, your child or your spouse is not going to be exactly like you. The point is that you learn how to maximize each other's strengths when you're different. And that's another thing in working with couples and teens. Teens right now have major confidence issues. I mean, talk about depression and anxiety, Melissa, with the homeopathic work that you do. It's super challenging because of just our society today and how they've learned the past few years, and technology and gaming and phones, etc. So when you have a roadmap as a teen or as an adult to say, these are actually your strengths and they're not really going to change, these are your lesser talents, don't really focus there, but appreciate others that don't have those talents, right? And it gives a framework so you can probably stop taking things personally and say, oh, I get it. That person is really in relationship building and likes to build relationships and needs deep connections. Oh, that's actually opposite from me. So how can we work together to understand each other? So, it's pretty powerful.
Mm. This is amazing. This is blowing my mind. I'm about to go schedule this. I mean, okay, this is a good question because I have little kids.
Yeah.
How old, what's like a good age? Because obviously a 5-year-old not going to be able to get his strengths at 5 years old.
Yeah.
Um, but I like this idea. We do talk about that in our family. How do we play to each other's strengths? What is your brother good at? Let's focus there, and how do we maximize that? And
Right.
understanding that about each other. But what's a good age to start something like this? What's the earliest? You said 15. Could you do
Yeah.
early?
So it's mostly 15 and up, only because the assessment takes about 45 minutes. It's not like a hard test. It's just innately about easy questions about you. So it's not hard to answer. But if a parent asks me to work with like their 13, 14-year-old, because critical times are also happening around that, 13
Mhm.
and 14-year-olds are moving from 8th grade to high school. So
Mm.
that's a pivotal time. And then another pivotal time is moving from high school to college. And then another pivotal time is college into the workforce, right? So I will talk to the parents, and I will ask about their child, right? So I need to know, how mature are they? How do they show up? How do they, really it just comes down to maturity and if they're ready, because some 13-year-olds can be ready. And I'm working with a 13-year-old right now who's just about to be 14. Um, and summer is a critical time also to work with kids, to get them ready for high
Yeah.
school or college or the workforce. But I probably wouldn't say earlier than that, because it is a methodology and sort of like an assessment. In the case of younger kids, in your case, I would say it's super helpful to understand your and your spouse's strengths,
Mm.
because that's going to help you be a better couple, probably to each other. And it might help you be better parents if you understand who you are. And then as your kids grow up, you can sort of see those strengths in them. And you'll
Yeah.
like already sort of understand the methodology.
Yeah. So what does this time frame look like? When we talk to people about homeopathy, we prepare them for a long road.
Yeah.
What is that like for you? Where's you mentioned a few different time frames. Does it depend on the person, the situation? Is it
Such a
a
good
year?
question. So every human being is different and every student is different, right? So I'll give you a couple examples. I'll start with students first. Um, I do an initial intake session to get to know the student because I really need to see if we can connect. And I want to make sure that that relationship is going to work. Sometimes I will just do one session where I talk to them, I talk to their parents, I run the assessment, I speak to the teen for about an hour, hour and a half, and then I have a parent session after. And sometimes we decide, you know what, we're great with the strengths, we're great with this framework. We're good, we're gonna take it from here. Or I don't see that the teen is really invested, right? Melissa talked a little bit about this. It has to be, I have to see some sort of intrinsic motivation that you want to understand your strengths and that you want to work on your goals. If I don't see that, I will say to the parent, I don't think they're ready, right? I don't want to waste your time and money,
Time for
right?
everyone.
If they're not ready. Sometimes the parents, of course, know their kids better and they're like, no, they're working with you because I know they need this. They just don't. And that's appropriate in certain situations, right? There's a lot of studies and data on how many coaching sessions it takes. When I had my executive coach as an adult, I worked with her for a year and then I worked with her for another year because there were some things after 50 years I'm working through, right?
Weekly for a
Um,
year, or how
I did
often?
it for a year and then another year.
Okay.
Yeah, with kids it's a little bit different, right? I'm usually helping them get to the next stage that they're working in. But when I started working with Melissa's family and we did the one session, her teens are very different, right? So what her son needs is different than what her daughter needs, and that might turn into a different number of sessions. If we decide to move past the first session and there's some great things that we want to work on, I don't work with anyone less than 6 sessions once a week for 6 weeks because it's really, really hard to manifest change in less than that.
Less than 6 weeks. I mean,
Um,
yeah.
right? And so, because listen, your teen is coming to me at 15, 16, 18, right? And they have habits and behaviors that are already instilled in them that I need to sort of unpack. And that takes a little bit of time, right? And then usually we get to a good place in 6 weeks, but there are other cases where parents just decide to continue because they've seen changes and we're just not ready to stop. Or being a parent partner and helping the student is working and beneficial. So it's it's not so structured because humans are, and human behavior is different, and everyone is motivated in a different way, right?
Okay. Thank you. I think that
So
is all my big
good.
questions.
So you know what? Homeopathy and what you do, Sarah, and the coaching complements each other so well. And I know we've already talked about all that, but I really just wanted to drive that home that homeopathy can heal the mental, emotional, the
Mhm.
physical, hormone imbalances, gut issues, food intolerances. There's so much that homeopathy can do. But when the teen isn't, what is my word, not maybe bought in, if they're not understanding or seeing the benefit, or they don't want to have the patience or the persistence to get there, then I think this is where what your services can shine. And really just thinking about health, this is where your services can really shine. But I know that you take it much further than that. You're helping these kids get to the next level in their life, their goals. Some of these kids might not have even thought about what they want to do next. And you're such an amazing question asker. Um, you make people think about these things that maybe they haven't thought about. So this is why I've sent people to you, because what I can see that homeopathy has this spot, but it can't take them to that. You can be that bridge that gets them, if they can use the remedies along with what they're learning from you, they can really get to that next. They can really run well, I think.
Absolutely.
Same thing with spiritual, spiritually, we can't run without the Lord.
Yeah.
So, homeopathy is not the miracle worker. Jesus.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Right.
if so we need the remedy. I mean, I believe the Lord allows us to use the remedies to help along the way, but He's the answer. So sometimes I'll be in a consult and I'll see there's more to this than just a homeopathic remedy. And so I just love what you're doing. And I'm just so excited that we found you. Um, was it late last year or early? It was early this year, I think. It was earlier
Yeah.
this year. I'm
Yeah. It
just
was
so,
early this year, I think February.
yeah,
And I've seen when we think about the remedies that you're providing, and I see it in my kids, because my one son has some major anxiety, and there's different remedies that I have him on. I truly believe that when kids have proper nutrition and their bodies are functioning correctly, their mind, um, obviously, and their body works so much better. So when they're not taking their remedies or when they're not taking care of themselves, it's really hard for them to meet their goals. And it's really hard for them to talk to me each week because they're not sleeping. And it's hard because they're not taking their remedies for their acne. And then I get on the phone with them and they don't want to go to the dance and they don't want to meet their goals. And now we're behind because they don't feel good. And I think something that that's worked so well with us working together, which I've loved, is connecting that when you take care of your body, you can meet your goals. So if you just eat, right, I tell my son this, and you take your vitamins and you take these remedies for iron or depression or anxiety, and you feel better, you're going to show up better. And then you're going to be able to meet your goals. I mean, think about it. Even as adults, when we get in a rut, when we don't feel good, when we're overweight, when our energy is down, I mean, we don't have the mental capacity. We don't want to meet our goals. We're lethargic, right? We're just trying to get through the day and take care of our kids if we have them or not. We're not meeting our goals either. So health is like at the baseline of all these other things, which why I think it's so critical. And I've seen with your help, in coaching other clients that you're working with from a homeopathic perspective, I'm always asking, are they taking their remedies? Because if they're not, it makes my job harder and it makes the kids' job harder. Because they're not going to feel good, and if they don't feel good, they're not going to want to excel to meet their goals.
That's what I love about that you're a parent partner, because what I've been trying to teach my teen boys, especially the boys, um, they're just like, whatever, she's just whatever. They don't really care. But then when somebody else from the outside comes in and says the same things that I've been saying, and then they're like, oh,
Mhm.
maybe she is. But you put it different, right? You're like, okay, you need to eat well, take your remedies, go, then you'll feel good enough to go to the gym, to get strong, to get to the Air Force, to whatever
Right.
you connect those dots, where all I'm doing with these parents is, okay, this is what's happening. These are the remedies they need. And then there's nothing else I can do, but you can come along and coach, like, okay, let's connect these dots and let's get this in. It's been,
Right. And sometimes I'll say to them, right, on a weekly basis, how are you feeling this week? How was your sleep this week? And I send the teens podcasts, and I'll send them short little, snippets of memes and stuff because they have like zero attention span. So of course I'm not sending them all these things to read, like I would an adult, right? But I send them things or TikTok videos or things that I know that are going to resonate with them. And if the following week when we talk or when I'm texting them, they're like, oh yeah, no, I've missed my iron pill for 4 days. That's not on me. that's on you. So then I ask a question, right? You talked about me asking questions, and I say, oh, okay, like no judgment. It's up to you to take it or not, right? And then I just ask, well, how do you feel? And then they don't really think about it. And they're like, oh, yeah, actually, I haven't felt great. Yeah, I missed a day of school this week. Oh, then what happened when you missed a day of school? Yeah, I missed this, I missed it. And then I just keep asking. And then it's like, oh, yeah, intrinsic motivator all the way back to let me
Oh,
just
yeah.
take my iron, right?
Yeah.
Or if, if someone doesn't want to do their homework, sometimes I get really crazy and I'm like, okay, so don't do your homework. What do you think is going to happen after that? Well, I get a 0. Well, then what happens after that? Well, then I'll fail the class. Well, then what happens after that? Right. And I just keep asking and they laugh because they're annoyed, but they answer my questions. And then we finally get to, oh, I guess I'm going to be living under a bridge in a tent. And I'm like, okay, like, do you want to change your goal that we've been working on for 5 weeks? Right. And then they just laugh and they're like, no, Sarah. Right. So I try to, again, I just try to meet them where they're at, and I'm not here to judge you, right? Eventually, I mean, you're anywhere between 15 and in your 20s. Like at some point, you have to take ownership and accountability for your own health. But I will say, sometimes it doesn't work all the time, right? If they're not going to take their remedies and they're not going to, do the little homework I give them and stuff, things are not going to change. But what's going to happen, and I've seen it, is they're going to wake up one day and they're going to feel the pain of, I'm not talking physical pain, or maybe I am, right? With Melissa, what you do with them. And then they say, oh, Melissa and Sarah were right this entire time. So it doesn't happen all the time because I try to stay on top of them. But it goes back to the intrinsic motivators.
So good. Do you have anything else, Bree?
No, I don't have any more questions, but I do just want to say to you, and I don't know if this will be encouraging, hopefully it will be, that even hearing you talk before and since we've been recording, this really seems to be who you are and where God has gifted you, and not just something you do. And so I hope this, like, you just feel that, and as you walk in this and do this, to know how life-changing it is for other people, that obviously God has wired you and designed you in a way that is different than others, to be passionate here, but to be influential. Like, even in our conversation, I'm walking away with so much rich information, and your spirit is so genuine in it. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I just pray
Absolutely.
blessing over your, really, a ministry, this thing that you're doing for people, because I mean, that's what I would see it as. So
Yeah.
thank
And
you.
I would say, thank you for saying that, because I know you don't know this. I don't think you know this. I think Melissa does. But I took a complete leap of faith in leaving a stable corporate job to do this with very little, I'll just say with a lot of risk from a life and financial and everything perspective. But God has been on my heart since I've been in my 20s to work with youth. And I used to volunteer in pediatrics and hospitals and whatnot. And then I got on this corporate path, no regrets, absolutely have loved my HR experience. And then just said, God just kept talking to me and was like, it's time. And so finally I just said, okay, I'll quit. And I did. And everyone thought I was nuts. And I said, no, this is what I need to go do. And I serve in my church in youth there, and I'm a leader there in one of the youth programs. And I just thought, I need to do this while I'm on this earth, because I just think it's so needed for these teens. And I'm a parent myself. And I genuinely want to try to help change their lives and help them understand that yes, this is Strength Finders, and yes, we're on this earth, and this is coaching, but this is a earthly roadmap to help you understand who God made you to be. So you don't need to be anyone else, right? And I help them focus on just be who you are, and here's like your roadmap to do that. So I absolutely feel called to do this, and so it's wild that you said that, because that's the journey that I've been on.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, I really did feel like I wanted to share that with you. And it's powerful. I mean, I bet people listening will can hear that. And it's funny, I was thinking I was gonna ask, but I figured I've already asked a lot of questions. If you do this in ministry, because that is student ministry. I mean, you look at somebody coming in on the outside who they're thinking that, I think they absorb a lot of, I'm doing this life for everyone. All the adults around me are telling me what to do.
Yep.
And you help them to see this is for you. Like God did design you in a unique and powerful way. Lean into that. And gosh, if they can learn that when they're young,
So good.
Yep.
it's so inspiring to think what they can do.
Which is exactly why I went into this, right? And then when I sort of looked around and I was like, oh, there's life coaches everywhere. There's no one doing this for teens. And I've sort of found some throughout the country, and there are people out there doing this just differently. I mean, we all have our different way of coaching teens, but for me and my calling, I feel super passionate about that because I can see how it can change how they show up in the trajectory of their life, and also how it can help parents and arm parents with the roadmap to say, I'm giving you information about your child. I'm telling you every single week what we're working through. This is where I need your help in the home, so that we can make meaningful long-term change.
So parenting teens right now, I think we probably have the hardest um job or time parenting the teens that we have right now than what our parents did. So when I was a teen, right, and you, Sarah, we're the same age. When we were teens, there was nothing to do at home. We
Right.
were we were out. We were with our friends, we were at school, we were going, we were doing all the things. And yes, we were getting in trouble or not reaching our goals or doing this, but
Right.
now to compete with screens and the addiction of screens, which homeopathy can also help with,
Yep.
and the things that come at you, all the social media, that is 10 times worse than that Cosmopolitan magazine that sat on the table
Right.
that that told those young girls, oh, this is what you're supposed to look like.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
social media telling all these boys and girls, this is what you're supposed to look like, this is what you're supposed to act like, this is what everybody else is doing, why aren't you doing this? And so yeah, I think we have a harder job right now. We need help.
Oh, absolutely. And there's um and you know this, Melissa, but I when I work with Grace, I make her go for a walk with me, because scientifically getting teens to move is critically important. And with distractions like technology and social media and video games, et cetera, teens just aren't going places, like you said, right? We were riding bikes all the time, and our mental health sometimes was good, sometimes wasn't, but it was just different. It's really, really important. So I work with, parents too on just, I don't want to see your teen in the same place every time when I speak to them, because they need to be in different places. So I mean, there's just so much to this as it relates to teens, that I think as parents, um, we just have to keep on top of it and keep researching, because there's just so many things out there that we just never had, that our teens are exposed to, that we're learning about as we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing what you do and all of this information. And I agree 1000% with what Bree said. I saw you light up when you started talking about it, and I was like, she is on fire. Like, this lights you up. And yeah, I love that I love your obedience. Because I've done that twice, actually, left corporate for the first time. I don't know that it was obedience to the Lord. It was just what I wanted to do. But the second time was obedience to the Lord. And
Yep.
so I've done that twice, and that's scary. It's a scary thing to do, but here you are and you're doing it.
Yep. And every single time I meet a new family, or I get to start working with teens, and then I can see their progress, or I see the progress in the home. Um, I mean, my heart, I feel it in my heart. And so I hope to be doing this for a really long time, and you're my forever friend now. So I know we'll be tightly connected for a while.
Thank you again for being here.
Thank you both.